Looks like we're live. Welcome back to the Live Drive Jive Morning Grind with your host, Frank Monday. What up, Frank? Frater Francis. I hope you good-looking, sexy people are doing all right out in Happy Land. When I was doing stand-up comedy, whoa, that's a huge machine right there. Jesus Christ, man. Sweet heavens. When I was doing stand-up comedy here in the Capitol, a gal once told me she was watching my set. She said, "Frank, you funny." And I was like, "Really? Thank you. That's the highest compliment, as this is stand-up comedy, and making you laugh is what we strive to do." And she said, "Yeah, I like that you're she said I was a clever combination of the profane and the sacred." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, you'll talk about these deep, profound ideas and make interesting quips about them." Quips, is that a correct word? And at the same time, you'll go from like the highest, loftiest vault of heaven, and then all the way down to the dredges of the dankest, nastiest sewage system. And I said, "Baby, that's what it's all about. I live in a nasty, gritty, filthy city, but at the same time, I am a descendant of the highest divine truth." And yeah, anyway, so it's that kind of thing, like where maybe out of, I don't know, a dozen comedy sets, one person will tell you something like that, and you'll be like, all right. The last 3 months of working on material and practicing and rehearsing and trying to get it right. And the key is 3, once again. 3's a charm. The first time you do it, it sucks pretty bad. You take it back and refine it. The second time you do it, you think it's refined and you're like, okay, I got this shit figured out. And still, it's a little bit off somehow. And so you take it back and you refine it, tweak it just a little bit more. And then the third time you deliver it, it's perfectly memorized. It comes off beautifully. Maybe something intuitive arises and it feels dynamite. And we're talking a 3-minute set, 3 or 4 minutes. I'm not talking about putting together 5 years worth of material and doing an hour-long show. I'm talking about putting together the refinement process over just a year or two. Because I only stayed in it about 5 years. But then the fourth time you do it, yeah, maybe some people that haven't seen your set before, but it's already growing stale. And you'll see comedians like Jerry Seinfeld. I forget exactly how he put it. I don't think the same way I just put it. I think he said the sixth time was the best. But by the fourth time, you're already tired of it. I mean, you're like, I'm still telling this same fucking set? Jesus Christ. And so the reason I got into it is because I was watching the guys in the industry for about a year and a half, and they used the same material night after night for an entire year. They were coming up with very little new material, and the whole time I was writing material. And I thought, Jesus, is it really that hard? And so I got into it, and I did a few sets. I had a few sets mapped out, mind mapped out, and I did them. And after about a year, like I said, I stayed in it about 5 years, I guess. But after about a year, I realized, wow, 1 3-minute show a week, 3 to 5 minutes. I think back then we were doing 8 minutes on stage or something, just good God, killing the crowd. But we decided 3 to 5 minutes was the ideal set run for open mic nights. And I learned pretty quickly that it was way tougher than you think it is. And thanks to Scott Huntsman and Liam, I forget Liam's last name, all I ever knew him as is Liam, but thanks to those two guys and Nico Martinez, the Mexican pizza guy from I think he was from San Francisco. I mean, obviously he's originally from across the border, but him, and Rob, the Turkish prince from Romania. Yeah, so Rob was a Turkish guy from Romania. So it was me, Rob, Scott, Liam, Nico, and the very early days, Toby, what was his name? Toby what? Toby something or other, and Ryan Ha, a guy from Washington, a Chinese ABC American from Washington, D.C. That was the group of cats that started that show. And when it was those guys, all those guys were my age. I was probably still the oldest among them, but I always felt the youngest because I have that youthful, vigor. But that group of guys started the Comedy Club China scene. And then they started disappearing, because guys only stay here for a year or two, sometimes 3 at the most, and then they get the hell out. And so the original crew got replaced by this younger college crew that was like PC correct and just their heads all whacked out on ecstasy and club hoppers and shit and wanting to play electric music, and it just turned into a nightmare. Good God. Gus was one of the best comedians that came on the scene as far as like intellectually funny jokes. That dude was a fucking genius. And he was pretty smart too. He came up with, he saw the situation here in Beijing, the dank air pollution, and he set up his own little company of selling homemade air filtration systems and made like 50 million Chinese. They took that money away from him. They're not going to let him take it back to the US, but he was clever. He was a clever cat. And he had good things to say about me too. Like my stage persona was ghetto as fuck. And he's like, it's an interesting thing, but I was back in the green room talking to Frank, and turns out he's like an ordinary guy. He's well-spoken and blah, blah, blah. And he said all that. And I was like, thank you, Gus. That is very kind of you to say. He's like, he's actually a well-polished, well-educated gentleman. And I was like, because, the guy on stage was not the guy in the green room, I'm just some little Jew hiding behind the curtain writing comedy. And then when I go out on stage, I turned into the full-on Angelino ghetto baby that I grew up as. So, fun times. We have hit Plum Blossom Road, y'all. And so I just wandered off into nostalgia land. But I'm not living in the past. I would actually probably get back into a little bit of comedy if everything hadn't turned so draconian. But there's no sense in risking your reputation and career over a hobby. Just ain't worth it. I love y'all good looking sexy people out in Happy Land. I might see you back here in a moment for part 3, but I doubt it. As above and into the abodes. Yeah, that dude almost hit me. Wow. See, that's why you gotta pay full on attention on this road. Bye for now.